Now, on Enough Said, with K-Fans Dan Barrero.
This still feels to me like a touchback. Sorry, and the ball's back at the 20. Nothing's happened yet.
And Justin Guard.
The pitchforks were out on him, and that was never going to be an option.
Enough Said.
We knew that wasn't going to work. I predicted it a long time ago. I said it's failing. And now it's obvious that it's failing. It's dead. It's essentially dead. If we don't pay lots of ransom money over to the insurance companies, it would die immediately. So what we have is something very, very incredibly well crafted. Tell you.
Welcome back to another edition of Enough Said. My name's Dan Barrero. Justin Guard is with me as usual, and Lori Fisher will get us started from the control room. Hi, Lori.
Hi, Dan and Justin. A huge win for President Trump. The House votes to repeal and replace former President Obama's Affordable Care Act. Some of the changes include reworking subsidies for private insurance and limiting federal spending for Medicaid. President Trump says he is confident the bill will get through the Senate. Dan, go for it.
Well, first of all, I'm a little surprised and disappointed they didn't find a way to have like confetti coming down, you know, like when teams win titles, NBA titles, Stanley Cup, the confetti comes down. There was no confetti.
Isn't that on Pence? Shouldn't Pence have something to do with that?
He'll probably get blamed for it, or Bannon, or somebody will. You remember Reince Priebus, the chief of staff?
Yes.
Okay, well, he was quoted
Very
as
good analogy
saying
coming up.
His big analogy was the president punted the ball into the end zone, or got it into the end zone.
Yeah.
Now, as it turns out, he was misquoted, by the way. Do you know that?
Oh, I didn't know that.
Turns out that the reporter who made that quote admits that when she played the tape, it was actually pushed it into the end zone. Because that would be more of a touchdown, right? Because everybody was mocking the original analogy.
Of course, which you should.
I would argue that the original analogy was actually more accurate, even if it was wrongly reported, because this still feels to me like a touchback. Sorry, and the ball's back at the 20. Nothing's happened yet. You saw the comments from Lindsey Graham.
Yep.
Any bill that has been posted less than 24 hours needs to be viewed with suspicion. Bob Corker, I've turned the volume down some time ago. I have no idea what the House is even passing. So I'd say to both sides, the hyperventilation about this bill and even the celebration, way premature across the board, isn't it? I think it's gotten a little insane.
It is. Well, the president's wrong that he expects it, that he feels like it's going to be good in the Senate. I think we already know that.
It's not going to be.
Yeah,
it
you
ain't
just
work
brought
in the
that
Senate.
up. But because we talked about this on the radio, and I was with you. I said, why are we worried about it? Because the Senate's going to defeat it, or they're going to change it, and whatever that was just passed isn't going to. But then I thought about it more, and I think my outrage meter has gone
up a tad?
Yeah, I just don't trust any of it. And even the president's comment there that we just heard, it's not about what they are doing. It's about what they're killing, Obamacare, and that seems more important to them,
no question,
really, than anything. And as I try to read the fine print, I go, well, who are we helping here in this bill? Doesn't seem like we're helping the old people. Doesn't seem like we're helping poor people. Sick people, it doesn't seem like we're helping them. So who does that leave in America that we're helping with this legislation? That's why I don't trust this thing at all. Like, I don't feel like they're doing anything for the right reason.
But
here.
I don't think I think on the Senate side, I don't think this can go anywhere.
No.
In part for some of those reasons.
But it shows me where their head's at a little bit, and that's why I'm bugged.
The head has been. We talked about it last week. He wants what he can perceive and view and sell as a victory, and there is no victory here. I've heard a million different interpretations about what's in this and who gets hurt and who doesn't. I also think we've already gone too far to people are going to die with this one. Remember when it was bad to say people are going to die?
Yes.
On Obamacare? Now it's okay to say
that
it's okay to die. But objective sources like the reporters at Wall Street Journal are saying you got some significant issues in terms of how many more people are going to end up without insurance. And what the Republicans have to get is if they try to own this, they're doomed if it does get passed, and I don't think it's going to get passed.
We have to stop it right there. Sorry, we're out of time for that subject. Let's keep going. After an impressive season, Gophers head basketball coach Richard Pitino signs a one-year extension. That means he will be here through the 2021-22 season. He says he's extremely grateful, and he and his family love living in the Twin Cities. I have heard through sources that he is a fan of Enough Said. I wonder if he's watching right now, Justin.
I'm sure he is.
Probably out celebrating.
I would say
not watching us. He's celebrating.
I'd say critic of the show.
Fancy restaurant.
Fashion critic for sure.
Content critic occasionally.
For sure. Does not guarantee that he's going to be here through 21-22, but it guarantees.
No, it doesn't.
But it guarantees nothing really. But in a way, it's the contract that everybody hated which Norwood Teague was spooked into signing with the Alabama thing a couple of years ago.
Right.
I think ended up working out okay for everybody because everybody wanted him fired a year ago, right? But why couldn't you fire him? $7.1
No, not
million.
Well,
I didn't.
I didn't
sure.
either.
I'm talking about the public
Yeah,
generally.
okay,
You know, people would, the people that we, letters
Well,
to
the pitchforks
editor,
were out.
The pitchforks were out on him,
fair
and
to say.
that was never going to be an option because even after this year, if they didn't have a good year, it was never going to be an option because that buyout was too big. But it may have worked out well for everybody because I'm a Pitino. I think he's a good coach. I could see what he was trying to do, even if it wasn't working out in the interim with how bad year 3 was. It was a terrible year 3. Rebounded nicely. I like the fact that it gives him a little bit more of a boost. And it's not crazy. It doesn't put them in the terrible category that people thought they were in a couple of years ago in terms of the contract.
Basically extended one more year.
Yes.
Right? And I've said this, and I still, and I hope he's watching, and maybe he'd agree with me. I don't blame Rich Pitino for this because it's not his job to protect the university's interests. But I still say whoever negotiated this didn't protect the university's interests because if you're going to give him more money and you're going to give him more years, there should be a bigger penalty if some other school, after he gets, according to you, to the Elite Eight this year,
That's right.
decides to come after him.
Yep.
What do we say the buyout was? $750?
This next year, unless it's changed in the new contract, which we don't know yet.
Think it is, according to Dean Johnson.
Next year it'd be $500,000, so it'd be very easy for another.
That's a joke of a payoff.
I agree.
And so that to me is where the university has embarrassed itself. In terms of
and we'll see if they changed it with this extension. Maybe that was negotiated.
But I thought Board of Regents guy said nothing's changed from the original terms.
Well,
I could be wrong.
Right.
But regardless, that's the one deal. One more year, fine, we're fine. Give him the reward. Though, as you say, it doesn't, especially because of how easy the buyout is, it really doesn't guarantee anything about how long he stays.
I'm not as convinced as other people that he does want to leave. It's clear his dad wants him to leave. He calls like 9 schools every single spring, which I think is kind of funny. We hear that through back channels. But I'm not as convinced. I don't think he wants to be. I can't claim to know him well. But I don't think he wants to be like his dad was, for example, hopping to the next job, moving his family, doing all those things.
He's definitely a different personality.
I think so. I think he wants to kind of set, whether that's here or not, I don't know. But I do know he's not going to be bouncing around the country trying to find these new head coaching jobs.
Well, we'll find out.
I guess.
Soon, especially if they have the kind of year that you said.
Elite Eight, at least.
Elite Eight.
Yeah.
That's a lot of pressure.
We'll
and by the way, the pressure's up now, right? Now you've got expectations.
Okay, we have to move on.
So you're hunted at this point.
All right.
Enough said. Facebook is adding 3,000 employees over the next year. These new people will monitor reports of inappropriate material posted on the site. We're talking even murders and suicides. And get this, there must be a lot of violence posted on Facebook because 4,500 people already do that job. So 3,000 more. Dan.
Well, this is.
I didn't realize there was that many people.
Well, that's the thing that was so annoying about all the outrage about Facebook asleep at the switch. The sad reality is what you're asking, what we're asking is save us from ourselves because this stuff gets viewed endlessly. 1.6 million views on the Facebook murder in Cleveland, Ohio, even after an appeal by a relative of the victim saying, don't spread this stuff. And so to me, my outrage is limited for Facebook. I know they got to do what they got to try to do, but the idea here that there's so much interest and so much stuff that's out there, that's still more our problem than Facebook's problem, isn't it?
It is. Well, it's first that people want to even do it in the first place. Do it
and then, let's go watch it.
Continue to view it.
Let's have a party and watch it.
It is strange how often because this isn't the first time. This is because of the Cleveland one, I think in direct response to Cleveland, but it's not the first time that something has been live streamed that shouldn't have been or just recorded and then released. But you're never going to get perfect. You're never going to pitch a perfect game on this.
Impossible.
Unless you just even it out and say for every person that's on Facebook, we have a person monitoring their account 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, or maybe like a smaller teacher to student ratio to use an interesting cliche or way to describe it. But no, there's no way to do it. So people. Why were they mad at Facebook and not the people that were watching it over and over and over? I
don't know.
I didn't understand that at all.
And as you know, the technology, I don't even understand it. We're never going to stay ahead of the technology. There's always going to be some clown who knows some way maybe to hide this stuff long enough in a way that Facebook's not going to be all on top of it. So is there exploitation by a big company? Is it easy to want to always go after the big company? Yeah, I get that.
And they're on the run about a lot of stuff.
And some of it may be deserved, but the bottom line here is, as you said, I don't know how stuff's gonna get out. It's the nature, and it's what deep down we seem to demand anyway.
Well, it's why it's
so
if
why
it
are
leads,
we outraged
it
when it does?
You know that if it leads.
I can think of a few at bats today where I execute a good pitch and the guy hits a base hit. It's frustrating and it wears on you a little bit. But it's not like I'm going to be going down there and facing a bunch of guys who don't know how to play the game either. I'm not just going down there for a confidence boost. That's not it. I got things to work on and I'm going to get to work.
The Twins lost to Oakland Thursday and sent starting pitcher Kyle Gibson to AAA in Rochester. But despite his performance, the team has had some good times this week. I'm talking about those record home runs. Dan.
Such a homer Lori is.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
She's saying we.
No.
She's saying we with the
She's
Twins
right
again,
overall. I mean, it's been
they've had a nice little stretch.
We've had a nice little stretch.
A rebirth.
But it's a good cautionary tale on Gibby because, to be honest, whether they're good or better than we expected for a month or two really doesn't matter that much. What's going to sustain things is a rotation. And this is supposed to be, if you go back a few years, Gibby was a #1 draft choice. He was supposed to be one of our main guys. We've given him way too many opportunities to prove that he's not up to it. And finally, with the new regime, they said enough. Now, how permanent this is, I don't know. But what it points to is until you have a legit rotation where that you think can carry you through for, several years, it ain't going to really matter whether you get a couple hitters going. And really, we've got one, I think only one legitimate starter that you could say
right
is
now,
really good.
yes.
And he may be gone because the assumption is he's going to be meaningless by the time the Twins are going to be good. So my point is the job of the new regime is to rebuild a rotation, almost perhaps starting from scratch, and this is another example of how the previous regime badly failed investing in a guy who isn't, he's bad. He's a bad starting pitcher.
Flip Saunders used to say, good enough to get you beat.
Yeah.
He's one of those guys that's got some stuff, has some talent, first-round pick, shows you flashes. I remember his debut against Kansas City. I think it was a Saturday game 4 or 5 years ago. It was great. Then he went 7 innings, and you start to think, wow, this guy could really be something. But he gets you to a certain point, and then he basically lets you down. I think why the regime feels comfortable in letting him go, don't you think the last regime was they wanted it to be right because he was a first rounder?
They're invested.
This group doesn't have that same investment, and that's why a fresh look sometimes is good because they can just say, he's not getting it done. They're not thinking, wow, well, we drafted this guy in the first round a handful of years ago. They're just saying this guy can't get it done, and they don't really care. It's their first year. They're not trying to hold on. I'm sure they want to win this year, but they're thinking about a longer
Their contracts
plan.
are long-term,
Yes.
and this is what we've talked about for years. It's why the country club had to be busted up.
Yes.
You give somebody a fresh look. There's no guarantee they're going to do any better, but they don't have any sort of prior relationships. And so, and if it's a failed draft choice, it ain't their failed draft choice.
It's not their problem.
It's easier for them to say. But his performance itself, I think, begged to do something. Now, the question is whether Barrios is going to be brought up because he is supposed to be part of the future.
He was
now,
supposed to be,
I don't know if the new regime thinks that, but that's part of who they've inherited, and they're going to need him because it's not like we've got a bushel full of young pitchers, and I'd like to see more youth in this rotation because it ain't very young.
And Falvey's supposed to be the pitching guru, right? That's supposed to be one of his strengths, either finding them, developing them, nurturing them, whatever.
Well, we'll miss Gibby for sure. It'll be emotional.
Next topic, a big national story is that of Baltimore Orioles center fielder Adam Jones. He was taunted by several fans yelling racial slurs at Fenway Park on Monday night, and Jones says it wasn't the first time. Take a listen.
It's unfortunate, man. Like I said, you think that you get away from that, especially being in sports. You come across all walks of life. You get to change not just my life, but I get to change other people's lives and outlooks on life. But for something like this, it just shows that people still live in their own world. They still have their own views, obviously, and some people like to express hatred towards another person and another groups. So.
Someone also threw a bag of peanuts at him. Boston's mayor and the Red Sox have apologized. Jones is being applauded for speaking out on this. Justin?
Yeah, that's the interesting part that Lori just brought up there, because now we're hearing from a lot of players, including Torrey Hunter, I believe, if you want to have the Twins angle, that this is not the first time this has happened in Boston. Sabathia basically said it's just a way of life. Now, as a Yankee, he probably heard worse. He probably heard everything, right? As a black Yankee, probably the two things apparently that Boston hates more than anything. Not the first time we've heard this about Boston, but we shouldn't make this completely about Boston, because I'm sure this still goes on a little bit, maybe even more so than we even think, at other ballparks. So to put it just on Boston, I think, is unfair. But one other thing I'm curious about your view, because we're also hearing that, well, if I was sitting next to the person,
what would you do?
What would you, or I would say something. Well, how come these people just sit idly by? Isn't that always a lot easier said than done? Like, I know we all want to say, in that spot, what we would do and how we would react. You like to think you know how you would,
well,
but it's harder in that spot.
It is
right?
hard. Well, it's harder for some people than others because of the fear of, if I push on it, am I going to end up in a brawl? What's he going to do? Is he going to? Has he got a knife in his back pocket and he decides to stab me? But you do hope that enough people find a way to step
strengthen
in.
numbers.
This is, I even heard Ortiz talk about this, like, well, visiting team, visiting players, they get this, like,
that's
no,
different.
This is in a different category. Throwing things, I don't recommend, but I still put that in a different category when you start throwing out the racist epithets and slurs, and that's the idea that we're still on this in 2017 is frightening. And the dirty little secret is it does happen, I think, a little bit more. And some players, I think part of Hunter's point was, if I make an issue of it every time, I'm going to get ripped, sadly.
Yeah.
So at some point, you don't even make an issue of it. You shouldn't have to hear it at all. And the only way, I think, to get it eliminated is, I think, create a climate where it seems there's greater hostility to that
person,
yes, than it is that you want to hate the player on the other team because he represents somebody else's.
And the next night he gets a standing ovation.
He did. It was handled. Yes,
I think the aftermath, was handled pretty well by all sides, including him. I thought he handled it better than Machado did, just talking about their team in general being thrown at.
That's true. That was a whole other issue.
A whole other issue about what has to go in the game.
We need to move on. Let's move on to something happening here at home, too. Students at St. Olaf College in Northfield have been protesting a string of racist incidents on campus. Several students have found threatening letters on their cars. Enrollment at the school is 74% white, and the school says it is working with students to address these issues. Dan?
I thought the percentage was even higher. I don't even know. I'm not even sure what the percentage is. I'm less concerned with the percentage than I am what was sent, the letters and that were left. That, has to be investigated. There's no excuse for it. In fact, this is beyond a hate speech thing. There's at least in one of them, a threat, and that to me should be actionable. So I think most people would say we're all for get to the bottom of it, investigate it. It's not something that any student should have to deal with on a regular basis. But sadly, it's been turned. I want to find out who did it, first of all. I want to find out if it was one individual, whether it's a cabal of people, whether it's a group of people, whether it's sanctioned that way. And before we decide to basically redo the university, the college, because that's sort of in terms of the demonstrations, and now we got a manifesto. We want basically the school to start over, and I'm saying I got to have a little more evidence that indeed a climate has been set there that is responsible for what might be, according to the president of the school, one individual. And the president, meanwhile, has basically, I think, a little bit out of fear, he's gone belly up on everything already, even though he's also saying from the writing, I think it might just be one person. Now, you nail that person.
Which is what he said.
Exactly.
He said, we want to find out who did it. This person should be punished. I don't want this person anywhere near campus. But you're right. There's no evidence. There is no Torrey Hunter or David Ortiz or CC Sabathia in this case going, hey, you know what? I was there 5 years ago and the same thing happened to me, right? There's no evidence that there was this systematic climate of fear.
Well, there's been more than one. But what is being asked for is a complete change in curriculum, a complete change in a number of different areas, some people being removed from a board, and I'm saying there's a lot of projecting going on here. Let's get a little more information and tighten up this investigation, make it even more aggressive, and maybe that was needed. I don't know. Maybe the school wasn't doing what it needed to do, but there are limits to what any school, and let's face it, on college campuses, most schools try to be more vigilant than they've ever been on this particular sort of issue.
I do agree with the student who did say, though, it's a small school. Like, if it is a student, I guarantee you other students know who it was.
I have to believe you're right.
Just because of, I doubt this is a lone.
It's time for our final segment, the lightning round. First up, Minnesota Attorney General Lori Swanson is going after Cars for Kids, that charity based out of New Jersey. The charity raised $3 million from 2012 to 2014 here in Minnesota, but only spent around $11,000 on charitable programs here in town. Dan.
Well, I'm less concerned about where they're spending the money. I don't think it has to. I just want it to be spent. I want it to be spent on the charitable part of it, and that seems to be the issue where there's most of that money is really going to is not mentioned. And so I guess the lesson, as sad as this is once again, try to do your due diligence. You
For
shouldn't
sure.
have to.
No, but it's true.
But you need to do your due diligence because a lot of people are pretty generous about what they're willing to give up, especially when kids are in the name. But you're almost obligated now to do your own due diligence.
And that was their hook.
Yeah, exactly.
That was their hook.
That jingle you can't get out of your head. The Minneapolis Park Board votes to change the name of Lake Calhoun to Bade-Makaska, its original Dakota name that means White Earth Lake. The name change, though, still has to be approved on some other levels. Justin?
Yeah, we've talked about this for years, right?
Not for a while, but you're right, now that it's coming up.
Yeah, I guess this is going to change everything, right? It's going to change our history. It's going to change our past. I'm really conflicted on this, because I understand why it needs to be changed, but I also say, do we whitewash everything? I think there can be some teachable moments out of this. They're removing statues in the South now. It's like, I don't know where the line is for stuff like this, but I guess we're going to change it.
The concern to me is like you said, in terms of dealing with the significant issues related to
the real
this,
issues, yes.
This has nothing. This name has become a name that nobody even thinks about.
We didn't even really know about it.
So I'll go along. It goes through a democratic process.
Okay,
if it gets changed, it gets changed. That's fine.
Here's a name, Dalvin Cook.
Let's keep working on the other things.
That's it.
That's what I would say.
Vikings draft Dalvin Cook, but Dan, you say he didn't come without baggage.
Yeah, he's got, the reason he's available, as you know, is he's got some baggage. He had some issues in his past. A couple of them were as a juvenile, which in some states, you're not even supposed to know about, but we do. And I have no problem with taking the shot because overall, hate to be the cynic, he's a hell of a talent.
You can help him win.
And more recently, there are less issues. And on the one issue that went legal, he was found not guilty. And I think we got to believe in the system to a degree.
We got to keep moving.
But that's why he's available. He's a talented player.
Justin, you're up. One of the most high-profile members of the royal family is leaving public life. Prince Philip, he's 95. He married Queen Elizabeth in 1947. This is big news.
Congratulations, 95.
95.
I mean, I know you're going to work until you're 95. First of all, I don't know what his day-to-day duties are. Like when you're a royal, I don't know I know you have to do a lot of different things.
They're complicated.
I would have no idea.
And layered.
But good for him. 95. I would have said maybe cash in that 401k
there's one person
a few years ago
who probably looks down on this decision. Be Sid.
Sid Hartman.
Okay, Sid has the credentials to say, "What are you doing? What a slacker!"
It's true. No,
okay,
it's
we
true.
got to keep going.
Right.
Good old Sid. Kelly Ripa has a new co-host. It's Ryan Seacrest. She's been alone for a while since
Dan's
Michael
been waiting
Strahan
on
left the
this
show,
one.
which we talked about last year. Dan, good choice.
If
you watch,
it's a confusing
watch
choice
the
to
show.
me because he's got everything. I'm
That's the
confused.
problem.
And my guess is that they'll end up brawling. I mean, there's always a personality clash with Kelly, is there not? I mean, it just seems that way.
I don't know. She and Reed got along pretty
I
well,
don't
didn't
know.
they? That's
no.
not what you heard?
Oh no, now it's
really?
open. It's open
Bloodbath?
hatred.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's ugly now.
Well,
Okay,
the
we
problem
wanna
is
get to
there's
LeBron
no more
James.
work for the rest of us. I mean, Seacrest is taking every job. By the end of it,
He
he's
has
going to
a
have
ton
every
of
He needed
job.
the salary.
I know.
I don't know, not enough time in the day. LeBron James has a beef with a brewery. As a joke this week, he pretended he was drinking a beer during third quarter in one of the games, but then the brewery took that image and is trying to use his likeness to make money. Justin?
I understand why he's probably a little perturbed. His brand is worth a lot of money. Now, some could say, LeBron, lighten up a little bit. It's Great Lakes Brewing. You have everything. They have nothing. Let them have a little bit of fun. But it's always easier when it's not you to say lighten up. And he said he's more of a red wine guy anyway. That it wouldn't have been beer that he would be drinking.
Really?
And they
I didn't
did.
see
On
that.
Twitter, they tried to and they were the beer that actually called him, that ripped him when he left Cleveland the first time. There's a lot of layers to the
I'm
beer
just going to say
section.
this. If I'm ranking crises, I'm going to put the new healthcare bill slightly ahead of this one.
Well, that's
Just
why we
slightly.
led with that, and we wrapped up with this.
That's true. That makes sense.
We understand our priorities.